Participants view. Huh, where do I see that?
And hello, Ramon.
Hey guys.
Oh, there we go. Hello, hello.
Thanks. Good morning, Tin. Should I call you Maria or
Hi.
Tin? Tin is good.
Tintin is good.
Okay. So we're gonna wait a little bit, but thank you very much for doing this with us.
Sure thing.
And I guess you met Charles and you met Jonah already.
I've met Charles, right? Charles, he used to do Friends of Lulu.
Very good. Yes.
Yeah, that's where we met. Okay. And Jonah, we just met.
I was just digging up an email exchange from 2006.
Oh my gosh.
Is that Gmail still good?
What? tintinp@gmail.com? If it's
Yes.
Gmail,
Yes.
it still is.
Good.
So we're gonna wait for a few more people before we start. It's just turned 7 o'clock. Jonah,
Okay.
nice haircut.
Well, thanks.
You do that yourself?
I did not. No, I had a couple of home jobs earlier in the pandemic, but this I actually went to a barber shop. I braved it. So I have one of the masks that you like fit around your ears so they don't have to mess with it much when they're cutting my hair.
I shaved my head earlier in the pandemic, but it's grown back since.
Yeah. I honestly don't know, like maybe my next haircut will be another home haircut given the trends with the virus and the possibility of things like closing and shutting down again.
Yeah, that's scary.
Mm-hmm.
Let me pull up the questions I have for Tin.
Are you guys all in NYC?
Usually, we have a few people who come in from other places. We've had people from the Philippines before.
Okay.
But usually, most everybody, the group is actually a live group. It's a meetup group that we meet live. But ever since the pandemic, we've been meeting online, and more people from outside of New York City have been joining us.
Yeah. What's your take on that?
On what?
On the whole, moving things online versus being live.
I think it's got its pros. So we'll probably do some of it, even after the pandemic. I think I'm going to do half and half. Maybe every other month will be live and every other month will be a Zoom. So we can take advantage of being able to talk to people outside of New York City like you.
Right. And I was just telling Jonah, I'm interested in this group now.
Yeah, I sent her the link so that she can join the meetup group.
Yeah, we've had Gina Gagliano on here. We've had Robin Chapman from First Second. We've had David Saylor from Scholastic, compliments of Jonah over here. We've had regular comic guy people too. Like we've had Neil Adams on here. We've had, who else have we had? We haven't had Amy Chu yet, have we? Have we? I don't think we've had Amy Chu.
I'm not sure. I've been in this group for so long that I honestly have forgotten some.
I know we've had Heather Antos, and we've had Ivan Cohen.
Yes, I'm gonna look at the past events.
You know who's joining us next month?
Search for her.
Oh gosh, I can't even remember who's joining us next month. I'm blanking. I hope it's not my. Sometimes my memory goes, and I'm wondering if it's old age or if it's my health condition. So.
You're not allowed to talk about old age.
About what?
You're not allowed to talk about old age when anyone is 1 week older than you in the room.
Oh, is that the rule?
Yes.
Let me pull out the questions.
We have not had Amy Chu.
which is strange because she's my unofficial mentor. I should bring her in. Oh, I know what it is. I've always asked her, but she doesn't want to make the trek from New Jersey to Manhattan. But now that we're on Zoom, she has no more excuse, right?
Right.
So we are now at 9 people. Let's wait until we hit the magic number of 10, and then we'll start. And other people can join us. Hi, Mark.
Hey, how's it going?
I saw Josh was in here too. And of course, Robert, who all of a sudden has kids. So. Anyways, everybody, welcome to the Comic Arts Workshop. We've been going on for 3 years now. John is one of the original founding members. I'm not sure if
You're
Josh
giving me
was.
too much credit, Ramon. I did no work to found the group. I just showed up at the events.
Yeah, but you've pinch hitted for me.
I guess that's true. Yeah.
You've done some of the interviews for me when I wasn't feeling up to it. So, and I appreciate that. I don't remember if Josh was in from the very beginning. Were you at the very first one? I don't remember.
No, I joined a little bit afterwards.
But Josh was part of the first actual anthology workshop that we conducted. So we had in 2018, 2019 that we did a anthology. We had a bunch of guys and we met once a week and I gave lessons on comic book stuff, and we put together an anthology, kickstarted, and got it published by Pronto. And Kaylin over here is part of the current group of people who are taking the workshop, and we are producing. Everybody has created for themselves a project that we will finish through. We hope to finish through, right, Kaylin? So anyway, so let's get started. So tonight we are very honored to have our very, very, very first international guest speaker. Tintin, it's Pantoja, right?
Pantoja, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in the Philippines, there's a lot of silent J's and G's. In the Philippines, I actually grew up with the name Hill was my last name. It wasn't until
that's how I pronounce it.
Yeah, so it wasn't until I came to this country that everybody started saying Gil, and I just okay, fine. That's okay. If 99% of the people are saying Gil, the only people who say Hill are Filipinos and Spanish people, and Brazilians say Gil because it's when Portuguese the G is a J sound, I guess. I'm not Portuguese or anything. So, anyways, Tintin is we met at the Diversity Comic Con. She attended online. And as I later found out, she's quite an accomplished graphic novel illustrator. And I was thrilled to be able to get her to come speak with us today. So our first question is, can you tell us about your career path?
Okay.
Oh, wait. Yeah. Everybody, please give a round of applause to Tintin for coming.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so go ahead, Tintin.
Okay. Well, in terms of career path, I mean, as a kid, I was always interested in comics. I started reading Archie's, from book bargain bins and all that. But I only started seriously pursuing comics in college. In high school, I joined, I was like the only chick in my in my comics club. But in high school, was it high school? College. I was attending college in the Philippines and it just wasn't working out. So I ended up dropping out in the Philippines and enrolling in SVA. That was in 2001. And I arrived like a week before 911, something like that. Yeah. So anyway, that was there. And I did 4 years again of SVA. Graduated in 2005, where a lot of things were changing. There was a influx of manga at that point. Manga was really big at that time. So there were a lot of manga adaptations, and I got work doing an adaptation of Hamlet for Wiley, and they were doing manga adaptations of Shakespeare. So I did that first. After that, I was able to do a few more. Like I worked with Tokyo Pop on Pride and Prejudice, another adaptation, which sadly was not published. It was in process when Tokyo Pop went under. And then I did a few kids books, manga math. They were kind of books designed to get kids into solving math problems in comic book form. And that turned me on to kids graphic novels and stories for the younger set. So I worked on that, and I floated for a while after that. Didn't do much. I And then what was next? Oh, I got a gig with Simon and Schuster, working with Hope Larson on a book called Who is AC? And so I finished that around 2010, floated a bit more, not kind of drifted between teaching comics and, making my own stuff. And then finally, Oni, I signed up for Oni to do a book called Unplugged and Unpopular, which is another kids book, which is a sci-fi kids book. It's not educational, but it's middle grade. The class would be middle grade right now. And then after that, right now, I'm still working on a series of books for a Singaporean publisher called Difference Engine. And it's called Makers Club, and it's about kids who want to get into STEM influenced fields, or they want to solve problems using STEM, STEM techniques. And that's that. That's until the present. And I forgot to mention, I was one of the people on Girl-O-Matic, which was an early webcomics collective back in 2005 or 2003, something like that. And so I was doing webcomics while I was studying at SVA. It was a pay site, so that was one of my first professional experiences. That was the first. That's basically it. So right now I'm between teaching, between doing my own stuff and freelancing.
I know I gave you that list of questions, but I do have some follow-up questions that were not on that list.
Sure.
You said, so you grew up reading comics in the Philippines. Now, when I was growing up in the Philippines, you were either getting Filipino comics, right? Or you were getting reprints of Marvel and DC comics, right?
Yeah.
But that was the 80s, right? So when you were reading comics in the, when you were growing up, were these Marvel DC, were these indies, were these coming out of the publishing houses, or were they coming out of comic book companies? What kind of comics were you reading in the Philippines?
Well, I started out with Archie's because Archie comics are everywhere here, or were back in the 80s. And then I found a stack of Tintin comics, the Hergé ones, in my school library. So I devoured those. And then, Alf comics, a lot of American reprints. And then I moved to Indonesia, actually. I lived in Indonesia between 1991 and 1998. And they started importing a lot of manga, translating and importing a lot of manga. So I would read and try to learn Indonesian, sadly, not very well, but I would read Indonesian comics, which were influenced by manga, as well as manga that had been translated into Indonesian. And they were translating a bunch of early 80s stuff. So we were talking about early shoujo, 90s stuff like Sailor Moon and Yu Yu Hakusho, the big 90s titles, the big 80s titles, Rose of Versailles. I also had a lot of international friends, a lot of Taiwanese friends, Japanese friends who would be reading comics in class, and I would just, borrow the volumes from them. And I remember the night before one of our big final exams, I was reading Rose of Versailles, which I had cribbed from one of my German Japanese friends. And I know this is a spoiler, but it's the French Revolution, so pretty much everyone buys it at the end. And this was a big shocker to me. So I called her up and I was like, "Oh my God, everybody dies! Why?" And she was like, "Shut up, study." So yeah, that was my big story. Like me going to pieces the night before my exam, not because of stress, but because Oscar dies at the end. Sorry, guys.
Thanks, you spoiled it for me.
Sorry, guys.
Hey, how did you get your first jobs doing comics or graphic novels?
Well, if you count Girl-O-Matic, I'm not quite sure. I think I must have signed up online somewhere. But in terms of doing the Hamlet book, which was my first published book, I got it. Sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
The Hamlet adaptation for John Wiley with Adam Sexton, that was mostly through school. I was doing manga at the time. It was big. This was around 2005. They were looking for manga artists who were kind of just coming into the style, but working in the Western industry. So I got a recommendation from my teacher, here's this publisher, they're looking for people. So it was, connections within the school.
So you were still in New York when this happened?
Yes. And then I finished it when I moved back to Indonesia briefly after New York. And then, so that's where I finished the book. I got the assignment in New York and then finished it in Indonesia, which was interesting because at that time, the internet hadn't been, the connections weren't very good back in Jakarta when I moved back. So that was kind of a struggle.
So after that, all your freelance projects were done while you were living abroad?
Yeah, pretty much. Online, word of mouth. All online applications, portfolio submissions. Yeah.
Would you say that all your work is coming through referrals and that you don't have to? One of the things that they always tell you, whether it's in comics or in business, is you have to network and meet people and make contacts.
That's a big chunk of it. Yeah, that's a big chunk of it, and that's one of the big difficulties if you're working in the U.S. industry and you live outside the U.S., which is how are you going to network and meet all these, all the editors, all the people, all your peers, and I hate to say this, but the COVID environment with people going online has helped that a lot. It's made connections a lot more accessible. If the one bright spot, I guess.
But before COVID, does that mean that you would travel to Comic-Cons outside of Asia?
Yeah, I would go to New York regularly. Once every 2 or 3 years. Check out NYCC. But I never made big connections there. I would always get lost. It was always such a big event that I didn't know who to meet. I didn't know how to submit. So it was mostly online via emails later on. And a lot of luck. Yeah. And hearing about submission calls. Yeah.
Why did you leave New York? Or why did you move back to Asia?
Well, it was simply, I was working freelance. After 9/11, it became very hard to stay in New York on a work visa, and the work visa anyway you couldn't support freelance. You had to have a regular job in the industry that you had studied in. So comics does not really hire people and issue work visas. And at that time, I know there's a way around it where you build up your portfolio. You if you're a very well recognized artist, you can apply as a special O visa, but that didn't apply to my case. Yeah. Beginning of the career, it's not really, it's for mid-career or people at the height of their careers. Yeah, not really people just starting out.
I could do that now.
Well, yeah. Would be quite expensive.
let me ask you, what do you think are the advantages of living abroad and working for the US market?
Advantages. Well, the cost of living is lower, I think. With the internet right now, with the connections, with the improved connections, there's a lot. It's a lot easier to get work, to contact people, and I wouldn't say it's an advantage, but U.S. publishers are being a lot more open with working with people outside the U.S. And traditional markets. I'm sorry, guys. Can you hear that? Is
Yeah,
there barking in the background? I am so sorry.
that's
Do you
okay.
want me to? Yeah. If
I,
it bothers you, I'll do something about it. If
well,
not,
let's
then
keep going. Let's see how it goes.
okay.
So the flip side is that, so what are some of the disadvantages of working from abroad, aside from, like the internet, which is now better, and aside from not being able to network at local events, what are some of the other disadvantages or problems, obstacles you have to being a freelance illustrator?
The time difference. It's kind of hard to field phone calls in the middle of the night. I'm doing a lot of meetings with with a US group right now, a meetup group, kind of like yours. And a lot of the stuff is like at the middle of the night at 2 a.m. for me, and I have to stay up late for that. Getting comp copies, getting supplies. It's partly why I decided to move my work digital instead of doing traditional work, like with pen and ink, because for a while it was super hard to get, decent pen and ink and brushes here, and they're so expensive when they get here. So the supplies, getting comp copies, getting work, getting reference. We don't have public libraries, so if you want a book, you buy it, and that can get pretty expensive.
Oh, I guess that's true. Huh? We didn't have public libraries. We had school
Nope.
libraries. I remember school libraries, but not public libraries.
Yep.
So now you're
Yeah.
do you ever work with, I know that last month we had David Campiti, who represents a couple of Filipino artists, and one of our regulars is also Chris Allo, who also represents a couple of Filipino artists. Do you ever work with representatives or agents?
I tried. I attended a couple of Dave Campiti's workshops, but I was never like my style. I don't think my style fit his market, for one thing. He's very direct market oriented, and it's a very I think, well, from what I remember, he had a very specific look in his studio, but also, I don't know, I just never found a studio that I was comfortable with working with.
What about agents?
I have an agent right now. I did work with an agent since 2005, but we split up, and then now I have a different agent. So yeah, that's pretty important. But he's a traditional book market agent. He's not a comic book agent. So I've been getting stuff mostly on my own, like in terms of work, but I'm trying to get him to sell my books, my stories. And he's New York. Well, he used to be New York based until all the New York offices closed for the year. So now he's like in the Virgin Islands or something.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's your ultimate goal as a graphic novel illustrator? What would be your dream thing?
I want to write and draw my own stuff, which is where the market is heading. It's heading towards writer artists, or at least writer artists teams, people who author your own stories. I've been trying to break into the traditional book market, the trade market, and that's why I got this agent. And my ultimate dream is to write and draw my own books, which is kind of what I'm doing now. So
Well, when you
trying.
say the traditional book market, you mean traditional graphic novel book market, not prose, right?
The traditional children's book market. So we're talking about the big publishers, the big four now.
So when you say children's book, you're talking about non-graphic novels, or you're talking about children's?
Well, the traditional publishers like Scholastic and Simon and Schuster and
Yeah, but
Macmillan,
they produce children's books, but they also produce graphic novels.
they've started getting into graphic novels ever
Yeah.
since like the early mid 2000s.
So you want to get in. So you want to do graphic novels for them, for those guys.
Yes.
Got
yes.
it. Okay.
As well as online. You know, webtoons is huge. Webcomics are growing. There's a lot more opportunities online than when I started out. So that's another avenue.
Okay. Well, I have one last question, but instead I'd like to open it up to the audience to see if anybody has any questions.
Okay. I'm so sorry about that.
Guys, anybody have any questions?
Can you tell us about your classes?
My classes?
Yeah. What do you? What
teach?
exactly do you teach, and what sort of students are coming to you?
I would teach, I had a class for adults, young adults, and we would talk about graphic novels and the pitching process and being a bit more professional in approach. And then I had a class for kids, and we would do, how to make comics, how to make quick comic exercises. So we would have projects like make a zine, make a 2-page comic, learn to ink, that kind of thing. So back in 2014 to about 2016, I was teaching, and then I would home tutor after that until COVID hit.
This is in the Philippines, Tintin?
Yeah, this was in the Philippines.
Any other questions, guys?
I have a question. What are you actively working on any kids graphic novel proposals that are like self-written and illustrated at the moment?
Yeah. I'm working on a YA graphic novel right now. It's been through like 5 drafts already. We went. I got my agent through that project. It's called Unicorn Sword for now, and it's been with him. I've been rewriting, workshopping it with him. It went through a first round of submissions, but didn't go anywhere. So we had to revise it, and we're going through it again, getting ready for the next, hopefully last draft or last iteration of it for 2021. Yeah, so it's a slow, agonizing process, at least for me, getting through to traditional publishers. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
The books you focus on, and like, what kind of themes do you like to focus on, or like a life lesson that you want to apply with your books? If there's a life lesson in them.
To the books I write?
Yes.
The themes. Well, I'm more of a fantasy person. Does that answer? Yeah. In terms of genre, I'm more of a fantasy person rather than a slice of life person or contemporary, which is, contemporary is rom-coms and things set in the real world. But I can't help bringing in themes of fantasy or horror or whatever. There has to be some speculative element to all my stories. And I think the common denominator in my stories is that they all feature young girls, at least for now, or even young women or young. They're very set in the YA space, so it's kind of like teenage, early to late teenage, fantasy or speculative genre work. Yeah.
Any other questions, guys? I have a question.
What have you learned from? Oh, sorry, Ramon.
Go ahead.
I interrupted you. So you said the first time you pitched it didn't work out. What did you learn about either the story or the pitch process that will allow you to improve for the next time?
For the story itself, a lot of storytelling stuff. I mean, the market is very particular in what it wants, or at least editors are very particular in what they want. And sometimes they just won't tell you. They'll say, this is not a good fit for me. This is not a good fit for our house. So I was very lucky to receive feedback from one editor who had very specific things to say. So I've been applying those. And a lot of those are, clarifications on world building, theme, character, you know, without getting into specifics, you have to know your protagonist very well. And the world has to, I don't know, the world has to have this, it has to be explained. It has to have this internal logic. And it's so, I just discovered it's so much harder to do fantasy than it is to do contemporary or real world stuff, because you have to explain the rules of the world so thoroughly, and help your reader like understand it, and everything has to make sense. And also the info dumps, oh my god, like how do you tell a person the history of like 1,000-year-old world or that kind of thing without gliding too lightly on it. So that's the storytelling aspect. In terms of pitching, I learned to, first of all, try to be resilient, try to not take anything personally, because the rejection is going to be hard, and there's going to be a lot of it. And just to be more malleable, I think, with the stories you want to tell. I think if you want to pitch traditionally, you're going to have to be prepared to make a lot of changes to your story, to accept a lot of revision within the scope of, you know, what you want to express within the scope of your story, hopefully while staying true to yourself and the story.
In those, you said you'd been through 6 revisions on a recent project. So
Yeah.
well, no, so at what stage is your work that you're doing this? I mean, you haven't redrawn 100 pages 6 times, I hope.
Well, I'm a bit slow. The way I do comics is I actually write the whole thing. I doodle the whole thing in rough sketches. So, you know, that's the whole book. At the rough draft is handwritten. So I've done that like 4 or 5 times at this point.
Ouch.
Yeah. I like writing by hand, and then I type it in, and then we do the revisions based on the typewritten document. So at that stage, at this newest stage, the latest document, I've handwritten the whole thing again. I've written the outline, turned it into my agent, and I'm waiting for feedback.
Is this you say handwritten, is this a story that's drawn out, or is it a text outline?
I draw the entire thing,
Okay.
like in doodle form, sketch form.
Right.
And then I summarize it as an outline and turn it into my agent. But before then, I'm working with an even rougher outline. So I know I don't think a lot of people work like this. I think a lot of people either go straight to writing the text document, or they work from a pitch. And I don't know how they get deals based on pitches. I think for an untried writer, you really have to have a finished manuscript. But a lot of people seem to get by on pitches. So I don't know.
Any other questions? Hey, how feasible is it to self-publish in the Philippines? Over here, we are able to, there's a bunch of printers that print on demand or can do smaller runs or do digital printing. So how feasible is it to self-publish in the Philippines?
I know a couple of people who are just doing self-publishing, and they're working okay. I mean, I don't know the complete finances, but living costs are lower, but also people are living together in with their families. Like the concept of living alone on your own is not the same as it is in the West. You live with your family until you're married, or you really have to like move for work purposes. So that contributes to the lower
cost of living.
What is it? The lower living cost, the lower cost of living. So people have been getting by based on that. There's a publisher, there's a writer publisher team. They do a book for teens about angels or something, and they seem to be doing okay. They publish in local comic book stores, local bookshops. the distribution system is really bad. So I got to say, digital, I think, is still in its infancy here. Digital books. So it's a combination of selling in bookstores, selling commissions, selling in local comic events, which were kind of plentiful until 2020.
A related question I have is this: is I've worked with several artists from the Philippines on my books, but for a long time, most of these artists that I would find in the Philippines are all doing Marvel DC style, meaning superheroes and people with muscles and things like that. And it
Yeah.
was, and whenever I tried to look for illustrators who did more work like you or Rena Tagelmeyer, or people that are artists that are more, that are not Marvel DC house style, but are more like original
Yeah.
graphic novel, memoir type, Art Spiegelman types, things like that. I couldn't find them in the Philippines until I met you. Is there a community of artists like that there?
It's growing. For the longest time, comics here was dominated by a lot of Marvel and DC stuff because that's the stuff that we were getting. That's the stuff that we were seeing. The local industry was very dominated by American comics or American comic styles. But with web comics, now that web comics are coming in, people influenced by manga, people influenced by indie comics from the States online, the demographics are shifting, the styles are changing. And we're seeing a lot more non-Marvel DC styles, I think. If there's a new webcomics site called PenLab, something like that, it features Filipino creators, and you'll see that shift in style over there. It's very much not Marvel DC anymore.
Okay, looking forward to that. Anybody else have any questions, guys? Nobody else? Okay.
Well, what are you guys working on?
Now, why don't you go around the room really quickly and introduce yourself and very briefly what you're working on. So let's start with Jonah.
Okay, I'm Jonah. I live in Brooklyn. I am a graphic novel editor and a cartoonist. I work at Scholastic on graphic novels and picture books as my day job, and then at night, for example, right now I draw. And I have a graphic novel with Little Brown coming out in 2023. It's a YA contemporary thing that is like loosely based on my experiences in high school. And I'm almost 50% done penciling it, which is great, but that also means I have to pencil the next 50% and then ink the whole thing. Luckily, I don't have to color it.
How many total pages, Jonah?
It's going to be 256, the full book, which is like 244 of art. So it's substantial. I did one other graphic novel that I published as a web comic, and that was only like 160 pages or something, and that took me like 6 years. And this is a situation where I'm trying to do like significantly more than that in significantly less time. So it's a lot.
Nice, your turn.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Charlie.
Oh, I'm Charlie Boatner. I was a minor writer in the Bronze Age, and I currently have a webcomic going, which actually is mirrored on Webtoons. So I know the Webtoons experience.
Don't say minor writer.
Yeah, don't say. Yeah, don't say minor writer unless you were like 14. So.
Oh yeah, that's how I understood it, like a young writer.
Josh.
My name is Josh. I'm working on a one-shot, a 122-page story that I wrote, and I'm currently penciled 8 pages, and I hired an inker, so he's inking some of my earlier pages, and that's all I've been working on.
Who'd you get, Josh?
I got a guy in Texas. His name is Sherman Tibian.
Okay.
I really like his work, so yeah.
Awesome. Kaylin.
Hi. So it'll be a challenge for me, but I'll try to keep this brief. I am working on it's sort of like it's been a love child since 2016, and I'm every day I'm learning something. I have friends who have different degrees of experience and have been published. And one of my good friends scared the crap out of me a couple of days ago because Tintin, you had mentioned that you have finished the script for your story, and you draw it out in doodle form and you submit that to your agent. So from my research, I understood that agents and publishers want to see like two issues done basically. So my friend, she's scaring me because she's like, you have to have this whole thing done. This whole thing needs to be done. Like, oh my God. So I spoke to additional people and I've been walked off the ledge. But so that's where I am now. I've just come off the ledge. I'm in the room and I'm sipping a cocktail.
All right, that's a good stage to be at.
I think every case is different. I think not every pitch has to be finished. Not every publisher expects a finished book. I think a lot of them prefer a chance to give some input in the creating of the book.
That's all right.
That's
Yeah, I've
definitely
gotten
true
mixed.
in the kids graphic novel space. Like
Yeah.
we usually like to see, full plot synopsis and some artwork, not necessarily a finished manuscript. Although if it's just text, then if it's just text, then probably the finished manuscript. But if there's some art, I think it's better to have it be like a little bit, I don't know, like it should be fully shaped, but still very, I guess, open to change. Like if it's completely drawn out and can't really be, or if it would be too difficult to like significantly edit it, I think that is an obstacle.
There you go. Hey, Mark, why don't you tell us about yourself? Mr. Tannen, are you there?
I think he's on mute.
Okay. Well, we'll come back to Mark. Robert. I'm going through the line. You guys are on a row. Robert, you're next.
All right. Well, I'm working on a comic book that is a love letter to my childhood growing up with 80s pop culture. And 2021, I'll be celebrating my 8th year working on it. So.
Dedication.
Oh, also, I will say that, yes. Well, the thing is, it's the comic book that 12-year-old me wish he made. So I'm never going to let go of that promise I made to him. So, but I will also say that Thanksgiving weekend, I just finished 22 pages, fully drawn, fully colored. So happy Thanksgiving to me.
Wow, nice. Congratulations.
Yes.
Jill, your turn.
Hey, good. I've got my coat and my scarf on, so I was going to run out. So I'm not running out because you asked. I'm Jill. Hi, Tintin.
Hello.
We spoke during diversity
Right.
briefly.
Right.
Yeah. I'm an art restorer. That's all this art around here. Not all of it's mine. And I'm working on 3 projects that I've kind of got stuck behind me there. It's interesting to hear people say, well, I've been working on this, 8 years and this many years, because if you work on 3 at once, let's see, just one, you kind of lose track of when you started. So I'm working on 3 of them, all fic memoir. Process is very interesting. I was talking about this with Ramon and a couple of people in the class. I am drawing a lot for my layout, but I've fallen in love with a certain kind of paper, and I do watercolor of some of the images. And then I'm going to start dropping them in via Photoshop into the drawn pages. And it's a lot more work than just putting them all on one page at once, but the effect is something that I've kind of for, and I can't seem to give up. And my deadline right now, thanks to Ramon, is to get 3 chapters done so I can make that the pitch. So
Okay.
that's what I'm working on.
Nice. Good luck. Good luck on the 3 chapters.
Lemni.
Thanks. And you'll forgive me, I'm going to go off video, but I'll be listening to you.
Hey.
Lemni, you're
Nice
up.
talking to you again.
I'm Maria Cristina.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tintin.
for being here. I'm sorry I was late. I'm Lemni. I'm Ramon's problem child student. You know, to the point
Yeah.
where
It's somebody else. It's somebody else, Lemni. Go ahead.
I have a hard time focusing, but I've got 2 projects that I'm working on right now. So I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm hoping to turn my dissertation into a graphic novel. So it's pretty intense. I did a come again.
Oh, no, I didn't say anything. No.
Okay, sorry. I thought I heard something. So it's a qualitative study that I did, and I interviewed 14 Dominican women, and I asked them about their ethnic identity, beauty ideals, and their self-esteem. You know, so how did they racially identify? What were the implications of kind of like beauty work? How did they learn how to kind of like learn about beauty, feel beautiful? Like, where are these messages coming from? And then what was the beauty work practices that they were employing? And then how did all those things impact your self-esteem? What Ramon said, he was just like, focus on just like doing one participant at a time and doing one book as a participant, since I've got 14 of them, and potentially doing that as a series. So that's one. Putting that on the side, that's one project. And then the second one is, I'm a psychologist, right? And my grandma, she suffered from schizophrenia. So I'm writing kind of like a small short story about her and kind of like her process. And I've told the story before, but just really briefly. I think I've got some time. Yeah, Ramon, or can I skip it? Yeah. Okay. So just really quickly, my grandma, when they immigrated to the U.S. from the Dominican Republic, they used to work in factories. And so when my grandpa used to come and pick her up, he used to flirt with all the women, you know? And so like she created this delusion in her head that these women moved in next door into the abandoned building, you know, into the abandoned house. And she always had conversations with them. And I lived with my grandparents during high school, you know, so like I always would catch her talking to herself or yelling at them, or just, you know, just very disturbed. And so, you know, I would tell her whenever I passed by there, I'm going to tell them not to bother you. Okay. I'm just tell them to shut up. You know, I would tell her that. And so, so I want to tell that story, you know, about my relationship with my grandma and how that kind of like, you know, lanced me into the waters of becoming a psychologist and then doing my dissertation graphic novel. But that's me in a nutshell. I'm a mess. Ramon's had me for about 3, 4, 5 months now, Ramon. I'm not quite sure. And I'm the last one to put anything up on that board. So it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to continuing with these projects and getting to know the rest of this community. So thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, Mark, tell us about yourself. Thanks, Lemni.
Thank you.
Okay, hey, I'm Mark, and nice to see some familiar faces. Jonah, haven't seen you for a while. How's it going? Hey, Charlie. Hey, Jill. Josh. I'm Mark. I also run another meetup group, which is for people who are working on their own graphic novels and kind of want feedback. And we have a very different vibe to Ramon's group, but we're all one big happy comic graphic novel family, so it's always good to see everyone. I am working on a graphic memoir called The Godfather of the Ghetto, and it's about family secrets, and it's about my great-grandfather who was accused of being a Nazi collaborator, even though he was an Orthodox Jew. And it's about how we relate to family secrets and how families try to shove things under the carpet. And it's also sort of reflected off of my identity as a gay man and how my family has dealt with that secret, kind of like putting a lens through both of those experiences. Tintin, it was very interesting to hear you speak today, because I'm someone, I can't draw at all. I love amazing artists such as yourself. And I've worked with an artist from China. I've also worked with an artist from Greece. So I'm very interested in hearing about the artist experience of working with people in other countries, because I've certainly had some speed bumps along the way when it comes to things like language barrier and just trying to really communicate nuances. It can be challenging. And you speak great English, and I know the Philippines in general is probably really great because the Philippines, I know English is very common, but when you're dealing with China, when you're dealing with Greece, and the Greek language, there have been a lot of bumps and difficulties that I've had in a way that kind of gets me curious about whether or not I shouldn't just find someone locally. And so anyway, just I'm rambling, but that's me, and that's my what I have to say.
Thank you, Mark. Hey, Mark, we're having our holiday party on the 15th.
Oh.
You're welcome to have the group. You know, we can do a joint one if you want.
Sure, that sounds like a great idea.
The Kumo space is already set up and everything, but just
amazing. Okay, we'll sidebar about that for sure.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
And lastly, me, I am what am I? I teach at local college, but I also created this workshop just for me as a way to connect. The story I always tell is that I hate going to the bars after Comic Cons. So what I do is I organize these speaking events so that's how I network with people in the industry. And that's how I get to know them. By inviting them to come speak, I get to ask all the questions that I'm interested in. I don't have to worry about alcohol or paying for drinks or the noise of a bar, the occasional dog, but not bar noise. So
yeah.
And currently I'm working on a graphic novel for Benchmark Publishing, which is going to be a graphic novel textbook about entrepreneurship. And I'm also working on some pitches that I am workshopping, and will be sending around. But I've self-published a bunch of stuff, and I've been published in a bunch of anthologies. So anyway, I am very, very pleased that most everybody here is working on something. I am really quite impressed with that. What I've noticed about this group is the longer we've been on, the more we seem to attract more serious creators, people who are actually putting, money where their mouth is, and not just people who are talking about doing something, but people who are doing something. And I'm really quite pleased with that. But anyways, my last question for Tintin before we call it a night, since we're almost up to the hour, is do you have any advice for people who want to follow in your footsteps as being a comic book illustrator?
Advice? Well, there's the advice that people, be nice, be on time with your deadlines. I think it's also, I don't know if I have anything particular or unique to impart in that. Be flexible.
One of the questions I sometimes ask is, what's some brutally honest advice you would give somebody? Maybe that helps.
Brutally honest advice.
You weren't worried about hurting somebody's feelings. What advice would you give them?
You're gonna have to make a lot of compromise, and it really depends on what you want. You got to define what you want and work towards that, because sometimes if you want to get published, it's sometimes it's gonna, if you have like this rock solid vision of this book that you want to submit and this story, and it's untouchable and you can't edit it anymore, or you don't want to change it, then maybe just do your own thing, self-publish, go your own way. If you want to get published by a publisher, I think you got to be flexible and be open to revisions and changes and input. So it really depends on what you want. I think controls what everything else. Yeah. So defining that goal early on is helpful.
Cool. Okay. I have does anybody here know James Rodriguez? He's one of the local artists here in New York. Well, James Rodriguez is I think he's from Dominican Republic originally, or his family's Dominican Republic. But he just married a Filipina girl and moved to the Philippines. I told him, just stay there and do your art from there because the cost of living is so low. So, but anyways, if anybody else has any question, nobody else has any questions, we're gonna call it a night. Anybody?
What's your dog's name?
Oh, there's 4 of them.
Oh, wow.
That's why there was all that barking. There's Blossom, Kikai, which means girly, Tisai, which means, fair complexioned, even though she's a black lab. That was the joke. And Sar, which is some kind of Dutch name because we adopted her from a Dutch lady. So, yeah, there's 4.
Anybody else?
All right,
Questions?
Ramon, I want you to interview those dogs in the next meetup event. Let them.
Well,
They clearly want to give a presentation. So
I think so.
They were all giving their own answers to my questions.
Right. That was Kikai. She's the noisiest. She's the one who's in the way all the time.
But anyways, Tintin, you're also invited to the party next Tuesday. Okay.
Okay.
It's in
yeah. Thank you.
Did you join us at the Kumo space last during Diversity Comic Con? I don't remember.
No, I don't think I was able to join the Kumo space one.
No, it was the after party. It was the after party.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not the after party.
So, anyway,
Thank you so much.
Thank you again. A big round of applause to Tintin, please.
Yay!
Thanks for having me on.
And definitely join the meetup group and join us whenever you can, whenever we have an event. And when next time you come to New York, you let me know. We'll go hang out. Okay.
Okay. Awesome.
Sounds good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Ramon.
Thank you. Good night.
thanks, Tintin. Thanks, Ramon.
So come next Tuesday, holiday party. Okay.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
Do I? Oh, there.
10.